Following the recent announcement by Prime Minister Peter O'Neill for the gas agreement signing between Total and the government on the 5th of April, some Elk Antelope Bluff landowners are insisting that the government hold off on said signing. While attendants at the recent Energy and Petroleum Conference welcomed Prime Minister Peter O'Neill's announcement of a gas agreement signing date with Total S.A, landowners from central Kerema are not too pleased with the announcement.
Government have to make it more clear what is landowners' benefit. If it is
they can defer it to the end of the year. Quicker they sign in, all prospects are not being completed. And also, we need the government to spell out the status and positions of the Gulf people. We are calling on to the Prime Minister and his government to defer the signing of the Memorandum of Agreement until these issues are spelled out clearly and the status where our people and how they will benefit out of this Papua LNG project, including the people of Papua New Guinea. We are talking about these multi-million projects. We have learned a lesson from the Southern Highlands and Hela. So far we have confirmed that only the landowners on the project impact area are benefiting. Their clan vetting, it takes them 10 years to complete whole thing. The government has rushed the project without cross-checking the ExxonMobil on the PNG LNG, which have created a problem with the Southern Highlands and Hela. And it took 10 years to complete the clan vetting for Southern Highlands and Hela. We have also acknowledged the same precedent is now happening to Papua LNG. The process, the criteria and the prospects under the Oil and Gas Act hasn't been followed by Total S.A. Therefore, we're calling to the Prime Minister and his government to cross-check, check balances of Total S.A, make sure everything has been done up. And also the government has to check each provincial government, the Gulf provincial government, its status and the position of the Gulf provincial government, how to accommodate this Papua LNG in Gulf province. At the moment, there is nothing happening in Gulf province, and the provincial government, the governor and the administrator sitting without nothing, no awareness, not informing the people where we're heading. So we are in dark.
Forums were held in Kerema town as well as in Karaita village to discuss the public's concerns.
We cannot be left alone. There is so much of this Gulf, Papua LNG. What are we going to benefit out of it?
You na me bipla mana meri, pa mi pla gona o tumuna tumoro ba also monem. You mean like invest?
Since we are immediately involved in the marine life, the environment studies, the ecology studies, we are involved inside. We are human beings will be affected by this project.
The Gulf LNG Elk Antelope Bluff Landowners Association are calling on the government to do their checks and balances with the oil and gas company and confirm that all the requirements and formalities are followed.
And the United Nations, it spells out very clearly, United Nations Charter, Section 38, that the indigenous people of that land or that country, they have the right. Joe Olivier came and said very clearly that we are the owners. This government is very well educated. We are privileged to have an educated government, yet they are out there to milk for themselves. You and I will suffer in the long run. That is the serious matter we are pursuing, that our rights and their duty as members is to change and amend laws to suit our people. We are operating on the Crown law. We are not Australians, we are not inland, we are Papua New Guinean, where traditional rights are part of our life. This has been very badly done away with. It's unconstitutional. The government is ripping us, stealing from us, not telling. I live in Baimur. There is no awareness. I haven't seen provincial government come down to the village people telling us this is going to happen. I have been the forefront fighter telling people and the developer to come down on their knees and come and explain to us. That has never been had.
The landowners alleged that they were barred from attending the Energy and Petroleum Conference in Port Moresby during the 19th to the 21st of March. I'm Leanne Jorari in Brisbane, and you're watching Business PNG. At the recent Energy and Petroleum Conference in Port Moresby, former Canadian Minister John Oliver spoke to Business PNG exclusively about the pros and cons of coal mining in Papua New Guinea. Thank you for your time, Mr. Oliver. Welcome to Papua New Guinea.
Well, thank you so much. This is my first time in the country, and I'm really enjoying my stay here. It's a beautiful country, and it has enormous potential. Yesterday I had the honor of meeting the Prime Minister, and I've been meeting a number of the cabinet ministers today at the conference, and I'll have an opportunity to speak tomorrow morning.
Oh, great. Is there anything that is worth discussing here that you can talk to us about, or?
Well, I think it's important for a country blessed with significant natural resources like Papua New Guinea to develop those resources responsibly from an environmental point of view and for the benefit of the population, but develop them. And this is one of the sad lessons I think that we have to convey from Canada, that sometimes forces arrayed against the development of fossil fuels can arrest the economic development of a country, and that's unfortunate. So there are some lessons. The other, I guess, significant lesson from a Canadian perspective is dealing with Indigenous people. It's critical that they're listened to, and they be dealt with respectfully, safely, and in an economically advantageous way, so that if pipelines are moving through Indigenous or First Nations land, that they benefit concretely in terms of jobs, in terms of economic participation, continuing revenue, and a part in the decision making.
That's a good segue. You brought up fossil fuels. Right now there's currently sort of a debate happening in Papua New Guinea with coal. There's a mining company, a coal company coming in, and they want to mine coal in the Morobe province. Then there's a debate, like I said, about those who are anti-coal. What would be your thoughts on it, or how, you could basically encourage or, discourage that?
Well, those opposed to development are particularly unhappy with coal because it has a higher GHG emission than certainly than natural gas or oil. On the other hand, coal is an important source of energy globally, and fossil fuels by 2040 will still represent 77% of the supply of energy, and to cut off an important source of energy will disadvantage the development of the global economy, and it always, when you do that, it disadvantages the poor the most in the developing countries. So before a country decides to shut off an important source of energy which can provide jobs, economic growth, and revenue to governments for critical social programs, they should think twice, because as long as it isn't hurting the local environment, then the question is, why should a country like Papua New Guinea suffer economically when huge countries like China or India are using coal and developing their coal resources and building hundreds and hundreds of coal plants? Why is it okay for them to do that and for you to stop development in your own country, which would create an economic disadvantage for the people, and particularly the people who need that economic advantage the most?
Right. I'm sure in Papua New Guinea we have a lot of we have wind, we have solar, obviously. We have big rivers, and I think a lot of the argument is that why not lean more towards renewable energy?
Well, look, I'm all in favor of using renewable energy, particularly hydro. In Canada, a large amount of the energy that's produced in our country is hydro, and that's, of course, green. I mean, you've got to build it, of course, but and it does have an impact on the local environment, but it doesn't produce, once it's moving, the GHG emissions. The critical thing is it economic compared to other sources of power? Hydroelectric power can be, depending on the amount of power that's available in the country. Solar energy and wind energy has not been anywhere close to economically competitive. And so what happens is, because it's more costly, there's a decision that has to be made. Who's going to pay the higher cost? Is it going to be the people who receive the electricity, or is it going to be the ratepayers, the citizens in their taxes, or is it just going to be more government debt? So it's not free. When you decide to develop a green resource that is much more expensive than the alternative, there's a cost to it, and at the end of the day, it's the people in the country who pay that cost, either the users of the energy or the taxpayers.
What are your thoughts on biomass? I mean, because that's something relatively new.
The same thing. I mean, if biomass can be competitive, then sure, we would use it. But it depends on the biomass. Sometimes the use of biomass can have unintended consequences. I mean, the use of trees, for example. You've got a lot of trees here, so that's not much of an issue. But often, it would imply reducing the tree canopy, and trees, of course, are a carbon sink, and they reduce. Just their very existence reduces the amount of GHG emissions. The point is, this is very complex, and the issues are interrelated, and so you need an objective analysis. You should never go by ideology. You've got to take into account the benefits for the citizens of the country in the here and now.
Okay, all right. That's a great ending, I guess. Finally, you're here for the third Petroleum and Energy Summit. Well, what will you be discussing?
Well, I'll be discussing the Canadian experience and what other countries can learn. I just don't want to talk about, the Canadian economy. That I think I wanted to talk about something that will have an interest for people in the oil and gas sector. What our experience has been, it hasn't been entirely positive in how we've taken advantage of the vast resources we have. I mean, we've got the third largest proven oil reserves in the world. We're the fourth largest producer of natural gas in the world, and yet our industry is in difficulty. So the question is why, and what lessons can other countries learn from that experience?
How viable will the lessons, how for Papua New Guinea, because we are a developing country, Canada is a developed country, how relatable will, your lessons be? Well,
I think some of the lessons are very much relatable, but it's not us teaching Papua New Guinea. We can learn from Papua New Guinea because, you've been exporting LNG for the last 5 years. I mean, there's $5 billion in revenue annually, and you've got these new projects going, and there's an advantage in that market to being early rather than late. So we can learn from Papua New Guinea about that because we haven't done it yet. But I think the lessons to be learned are to make sure that the decisions that are made are in the interests of the citizens now, and not some theoretical benefit that might happen to the global climate, 80 years from now, when other countries, much wealthier and more powerful countries, are not necessarily doing their part. So why should a less developed country suffer because some people are telling them that they shouldn't develop their resources? I mean, that would be a serious mistake for this country, and my sense is, having spoken to the Prime Minister and some other men, that it's a mistake you're not going to make.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Mr.
You're
Oliver.
most welcome.
Hope you enjoy the rest of your stay here.
I'm sure I will. Thank you.
I'm Leanne Jorari in Karaita Village, Kerema, and you're watching Business PNG.
This is the first big move by the central bank since its establishment more than 3 decades ago. The currency processing facility cuts down the risk associated with transporting old money to Port Moresby to be destroyed. This facility also shortens the length of time it takes for financial processes that happen between commercial banks and the central bank, and between the central bank and government agencies.
As the country grows, you can't just rely on one branch in Port Moresby. We've just had the opportunity to go inside and see how it supports our banks through the management of the currency. So rather than the banks sending the money to Port Moresby, they can come in here now, bring in all the money, and the money is processed, and then it's refunded.
The decision to branch out to Ley took more than 7 years from concept to project completion, and they wouldn't let us take pictures inside the building, but what we can say is that this is the most secure building in the city.
This afternoon, for this segment,
Treasury Minister Charles Abel outlined the government's policies as usual. Among his points, he said free internet in Papua New Guinea is slowly becoming a reality, and that there is now a shift in the tax collection for resource projects.
The agencies of government must make sure those cost savings are passed on. Dataco did not pay for that cable. Kumul did not pay for it. The government, national government, and our friends paid for it. Australian government, the people of Australia help us. The cost structure is low. There is no excuse for the agencies of government to put unnecessary fees on when their costs are low.
This move by the central bank also means that there is a lot more accommodation revenue coming into Ley City. All the workers are accommodated here where they will work.
The 2018 final budget outcome stating a total revenue of around 14 billion kina. That's 6 billion kina above the expected 2018 supplementary budget. Minister Abel welcoming the increase, stating it showed that the government's aim to broaden its tax collection will improve revenue collections.
And taxation collection, particularly from the resource sector, has been improved quite a lot. We still need to do more work on that side. So the revenue side of the picture is quite good. We're trending upwards, and we want to continue to drive that revenue collection as a percentage of GDP further up.
But 2018 also reported a deficit of around 2 billion kina. The government spending a whopping 16 billion kina on APEC, earthquake relief, and an additional 4,843 on frontline workers.
Contributed to that additional cost, and I mentioned the APEC and the earthquake, and also we had some unbudgeted pay rise. Remember, we paid the 3% pay rise, which was unbudgeted. That added to it. And we also had some above budget superannuation arrears that we worked hard on retiring.
The country's debt for domestic and international standing at 25.6 billion kina by the end of 2018.
In relation to our debt, what we said was that we would borrow smarter, borrow cheaper, and borrow on better conditions so that we repay much longer, like the Deputy Prime Minister was saying previously. We borrow now, but we have to repay back in 3 months. It's very difficult to generate that income, which has to repay those loans. And now that we can access things like the sovereign bond, which it took us some time, and we got on the road for 10 days, but that's a 10-year repayment. So again, things like the projects coming on, they will generate some activity, provide some more opportunities for our Papua New Guinean entities here when those projects come on. And they pay more taxes, and we have a little bit more one kina to pay those loans way off in the future.
But Treasurer Charles Abel remains confident that 2019 will see an increase in revenue as the government works on getting more resource projects in motion.
Things are not as bad as everyone was saying. If we can have a good year in 2019 without earthquakes, and we can continue to deliver these resource projects and collect our taxes and manage our cost, we don't have things like APEC or elections to disturb us, we really focus on the priorities. And I think particularly if we deliver these resource projects, the next 4 or 5 years should be very good. And we get back to a good, robust growth rate.
Questions over coal were raised again at the University of Technology when Environment and Conservation Minister John Pundari visited the university for the signing of a partnership agreement between the government and Unitec. As many informed Papua New Guineans debate over whether coal should become an energy source in future, the Environment Minister is of the view that big countries should take the lead in mitigating climate change.
Whilst we know and we read and we hear about these warnings and are discussed, the global community is not aggressive enough, especially the industrialized nations. They've got to lead by example.
The Environment Minister's current stand is in contrast to the Somali-led government's position, which challenged large countries to cut emissions and forced them to acknowledge Papua New Guinea's position as the third largest carbon sink. And while Pundari says the agreements are not yet set in stone, he says the country's development needs still have to be satisfied.
My simple answer was the fact that what can you build on where the coal reserves are so that the benefits are there for our people. And that is the challenge that we will always have. We will go
to the line also pushed by the Energy Minister Sam Basil. While various government ministries are pushing the pro-coal position, PNG is yet to conduct its own study into claims and data put forward by the coal developer, Mayor Resources.
Vendors who come to sell at 9 Mile, just outside of Port Moresby, do so under a number of risks. Here, there are over 200 vendors who sell fresh produce, firewood or other items, and they do so without proper market facilities like water supply, market stalls and proper security. Julie Topeke is one of the vendors who lines up a fresh good produce for sale just 1.5 meters from the main road.
Mipla kita mama loya no ka unpla proper market do mipla. So mipla mama mipla sa market all Spakman all saka simani lo mipla isa ka conflict cross fight namin lo mipla na. Market mo sa stop good lo unpla good pla market. So this la fight make him na plenty time mipla no sirang good na market.
In 2014, 9 Mile had a proper market and bus stop facility, but because of continuous fights between the settlers here and police officers, the market facility was pulled down, and until today, no new facilities built.
Mipla all kata mama loya ose every worry lo mipla like him ose member na governor mas look sawe lo kutuan pla good pla proper market lo mipla all mama lo 9 Mile. Because mipla no sirang good now yet mipla ko sirang are lo road na market na I'm not safe too because car anytime bakam accident them sa happen are lo road.
And the reconstruction of the road leading out of 9 Mile has made it even narrower and risky for vendors like Julie.
And that's all for Business PNG tonight. For more information, or if you would simply like to view this episode again, visit EMTV online at the URL at the bottom of your screen. Or to simply join the conversation, like our page on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at the Twitter handle at Business PNG. Until next week, have a pleasant evening. I'm Leanne Jorari, and this was Business PNG.